The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmitz.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here at Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal in this morning. Hope everyone's doing all right. What a whirlwind week it has been. And lots of recruiting to get into. We can talk the Husker 8 and Nebraska's lawsuit and the Big Ten's decision to maybe walk back some of their thoughts about a start date in the new year, and maybe it's a November reality. You can join us this morning. Dial us up at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find us on Twitter, Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio. Mark Cranack at Mark Skurs, Elijah Herbal at Herbal Essence. You can email Chris at HailVarsity.com. Real quick, a heartfelt thank you to all the folks that showed up, and we had a great time out at Wilderness Ridge yesterday. Happy hour with Hail Varsity. It's kind of an annual event we do out on the deck at Wilderness Ridge. Phenomenal golf course facility. Big props to Shuey for sitting in. And, man, it was just fun. It was a little warm.
I missed it.
I
know. I was supposed to be there with you, man, but I had, the boy
You had dad duty, brother. You had dad duty. You had dad duty. It was all good. No, I love you. It's okay. Shuey was fantastic. No worries at all. Klausberg made an appearance.
That's always good.
And then he went off the top rope with a steel chair on kids who transfer to Oregon State. So...
Okay. It's not too late to do that.
Well, I'm saying, when it comes to the myocarditis, he thought everybody that had heart issues already transferred. So,
of course.
So
remember when rhabdo was the concern,
right? And that's just from working out too much and.
My, how times have changed. I love how you started, by the way, this show and this segment with what a whirlwind, because I think you've said something to that effect for about 80 straight Saturdays.
Well, and I need to change up my vocabulary, but I get your point.
It's not that. I'm not saying you're doing a poor job of choosing the right words. I'm just saying, can we have a freaking normal week?
No, is the answer.
It's so hard.
This is the normal week.
This would be the normal week. This would be game week.
Yes. That's what so this awesome.
Would be. This would be Purdue
Under
coming
the lights.
up in a week.
Under the lights.
Sans Rondale Moore, which you go ahead and give Nebraska an extra 3.5 points for that.
I'm thinking more like 10, but yeah.
I mean, maybe, right?
Him up the seam, him on a punt return, good night now, right?
Yeah. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But guess what? We don't have to worry about that either.
Unfortunately.
Because there's no game.
What do you think of this November deal? And I know we were talking to Parker Gabriel yesterday, and
I'm exhausted by it.
No, I hear you. Or I think we're all exhausted.
Quit playing with me.
Yeah, I just don't like this. Even though it's moving football up, and it's a traditional holiday weekend that we're all super familiar with as Nebraska folks. As we grew up, it was Oklahoma or Colorado. But I just don't like doing that. If you're going to move things up and deem November potentially safe with the presidents and chancellors still having to vote, and we'll get into that in a minute with Commissioner Warren and the Husker 8 lawsuit. If you're going to do this, do it right and see how early you can play so you can be part of the regular college football season that the other Power 5 leagues are doing, the three. If you're going to do it, if you're going to do it, get going in October, reach out to the leagues you've pissed off because you had to be first and try and call your shots, right? I mean, you had a conference call with all of the Power 5 commissioners in the summertime, and we've had people highlight this. Brad Edwards, we've had Lars Anderson, and the Big Ten jumped out in front with this conference-only schedule. Pretty smart. I get it. I'm not knocking that, but there was no communication at all between the Big Ten and the rest of the Power.
Recurring theme
Right.
for communication.
Right. We're going to be first and we're going to be best. So you can't really crawl back to the SEC, but what you could do is say, listen, I know it's pretty rampant with COVID on campus. You've got some places that are just going fanless. And that's not a new idea, but it's kind of a new reality with North Carolina and Miami's going to allow people but not students. I mean, so it's still a mess in some of the conferences. Notre Dame said, you know what, we're gonna suck it up and go back to in-person learning. The only reason they're doing that is to stick with their earlier narrative that says if there's no kids, there's no football. So, or maybe they think the numbers will decrease and kids will be smarter about partying and whatnot. But I look at this and say, work together and let's pick a start date. If that means September 26th because the SEC's not going to budge, if you're going to revisit it, let's revisit it so it's still not just choppy, okay? And starting on Thanksgiving will give you some early TV views probably because you'll set your schedule back up for some who's who games, I would think. Just figure out a way to go a little earlier if you're thinking about resetting things anyway, so you can get your conference title game played, and you've got a participant in Ohio State for the college football playoff. Don't screw them out of that, even though you're thinking about let's remeasure. Why do you think they're revisiting this, Cranack? I mean, is it just it's more than the lawsuit, but there's been just a barrage of pressure. Not 80 straight weeks, but we're working on a month here by some sort of force against the commissioner of the Big Ten. And I credit those that have not wanted to take no for an answer.
I think there's a couple things there. I think one, there was the expectation that when the Big Ten made this announcement, which how long ago was it now? It's days are just completely
the 11th.
Blending together.
The 11th.
It was the 11th. And so today we're at the 29th. So 18 days ago, right?
Yep.
So I think they expected other leagues to follow suit in some capacity.
By now they would have folded.
And it has not happened.
Right.
Doesn't mean it won't, but it has not happened. And I think as that's become clearer and as you've seen Oklahoma's in camp and all kinds of other teams, they're in camp, man. They're practicing. They're ready to roll. They're going to go. They're going to do this. As of now, things could always change. I think that one, as that has become more clear, they're sort of like, ooh, we don't want to be the only one. What? And then you have on top of that all the public pressure from member institutions, from players who now have a much louder voice. And then also the realization and the thought that, look, are you going to get COVID because of football? It doesn't seem like it, right? Like, look, it's possible. You absolutely can contract the virus while playing football against somebody else that has it. That can happen. But high schools are playing across the country. High schools are playing across the state. That's definitely happening. So are you going to get it because football is in session? Or are you going to get it because you're just going to get it and football happens to be... So you combine all that, plus all the public pressure, plus the bungling of the initial announcement, and the very arbitrary, we're shutting it down and we'll play in the winter in January. Like, why? Why then? What's different then? And you cannot get away from the idea of it's just they have not come up with a good explanation for at all. Still, 18 days later. There is no good explanation for why they selected the time period that they selected, which is January, and why you couldn't do it in, say, October or late September. At least give it a shot. Put it this way. Does anybody expect that the season, regardless, is just going to go off without a hitch? No.
No.
No one's expecting that. Like, look at Major League Baseball right now. It was the Cardinals that have missed like 100,000 games or whatever, right? Like, it happens. I think we expect that is a very real possibility, and you deal with it as it happens in sort of a real-time situation. But, man, as you're seeing high school teams take the field, as you're seeing the SEC, Big 12, ACC, despite coronavirus outbreaks on the campus, still giving it a go, reserving the right to cancel a game or two or to shut it down at any point if an outbreak occurs. Like, there is yet to be one good explanation for why you would not do that. What is it? Like, what have you heard anything?
I have
a good explanation for why you would not give it a shot. 18 days later, they still can't come up with one. What are the parameters? What's the environment like in, say, January, which is what they're kicking around? They're kicking around a November start date and a January start date. What is different then? Does myocarditis disappear?
Well, I think no is the answer. I think what's different is this funding, this approval of rapid testing. $750 million, 150 million swabs, okay, that will give you COVID results in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. That is different now than 18 days ago, even though they were talking about it 18 days ago. and that may well be true, but that was still on the radar 18 days ago.
But that wasn't the key reason why they pulled it. They, at no point did they make it clear. Did Kevin Warren and company make it clear that, hey, we're not doing this because rapid testing's not available, so what do you do? They never said that.
It may be part of their reasoning, but it wasn't communicated or laid out.
No. And look, I don't appreciate the way Kevin Warren is rolling, specifically his communication.
Right.
But we do need to make it clear. I think he gets the brunt of the criticism when he exists at the pleasure of it's called the COP, the chancellors and the
President's Council.
Yeah. It's the POC. What do they call it? I don't know. There's some sort of abbreviation.
Council of Presidents and Chancellors. COPC, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Council of Presidents and Chancellors. That is the governing body, right? And they set the direction and basically tell Kevin Warren what to do. Now he does operations, but it's on them, right? It's absolute. That was not Kevin Warren's decision.
It's also on Kevin Warren to not have 12 different meetings or however many there were, and try and relate how each group is feeling. You have this competition committee that's been created, and that's Moose and Frost and a bunch of other folks that include presidents, that include chancellors, that include medical experts.
Sure.
They're all on a Zoom together communicating.
Look, I'm not trying to give the guy a pass.
You're not defending him. You're just laying out his job and the challenges of it, which are immense. I get that. But he went down this road of isolation from the get-go with the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 and the Pac-12, where he went rogue saying this is what the Big Ten's doing. We're not going to work together. I'm going to do what's best for us, or at least give myself the biggest kind of bump here. There's a lot of ego with this, man. And yes, health and safety's a part of this. Liability's a part of this. But when push comes to shove, the Big Ten wanted to be the big dog and call the shots. That is as much a part of it. Not as much, but it was a factor. And that's my biggest problem. Is how they've handled this and why they've gone about it this way, and how they can't give you a freaking straight answer. And now it's up to 8 Husker players to go forward with a beautiful lawsuit. and you want to talk about freaking out. What if you, and Vince Powers laid this out just awesome this week for us. What happens if things go the wrong way against the Big Ten when it comes to ruling and a judge here in Nebraska, and you got the commissioner under oath in a Nebraska courtroom.
I think that's very unlikely that it would happen. But maybe
it was. Who knows? I mean, it's already kind of gone further than we thought, right? I mean, did you think a lawsuit would actually come forth? Did you think the Big Ten would actually respond? All of that's happened. Okay,
no, it's true.
So does things get punted out because of the Big Ten's response? The Big Ten's response has been pretty short and sweet. We're the Big Ten. You can't tell us what to do. We don't adhere to anybody when it comes to open records requests, and that's not accurate because of the public universities associated with the Big Ten.
Yeah, you may be able to, if you're Northwestern, you may be able to opt out.
That's the only one because they're private.
Everybody else is public. So, yeah, there could be legs there. Who knows? And it might be Nebraska that's just kind of prompting something that could be much larger. Look, but my point about the Big Ten versus Kevin, I just think Kevin Warren gets way too much wrath. He deserves some, but the Council of Presidents and Chancellors, look, a decision of this magnitude does not happen if it's just in Kevin Warren's brain alone. Right? It's not like this dude's like, hey, I'm just gonna pull the plug.
He's a lobbyist though. He's supposed to be a lobbyist for the coaches and athletic directors as well. All right.
Well, he's the liaison. He's between their interests and then the interests of the Council of Presidents and Chancellors.
That's why you're getting $5 million a year.
That's who signs his check. That's who hires him. They voted to hire Kevin Warren. They voted to retain Delaney back in the day. Mm-hmm. Like that's right. Like those are his bosses. That's the board. You know, he doesn't have a job without them, and he doesn't make a decision of this consequence, of this magnitude, without them fully on board, right? Or at least a majority of them, or enough of them. I guess that's part of the lawsuit is how many were in favor of this. How many were not? Why can't you tell us? Where's the vote? It's an absolutely ridiculous situation. And it also made me think about, what about all the bowl ties too? You wonder if they're getting some back end pressure from that too.
Well, what are their TV partners?
Revenue. There's conference tie-ins.
Yeah.
This jeopardizes all of that.
What are the TV partners saying about January going up against the NFL? What are they saying about January going up against the college football playoff?
Well,
and
right.
You've got these top tier platforms, ABC, ESPN, Fox, that are going to be kind of busy in January, specifically January 1st, with your college football playoff and your national title game. Now, I know you do not want to go head-to-head for that, for some meaningless Rutgers, Michigan State crap. I mean, it's just idiotic. So go earlier. But even like jumping in November isn't good enough for me. If you're going to revisit this thing for October, or piss off and let's talk in 2021.
Yeah, or you got a month. Do it September 30th, right? And just come on. The timing of just launching in and around Thanksgiving is absurd. Now, complicating things, of course, is today's political environment. Mm-hmm. Heating this thing up is today's political environment. And Joe Biden for America. I don't know if you saw the.
Oh, I saw the ad, and you've had a lot of folks react very negative. I mean, it's a punch in the junk ad, because you got all these empty stadiums, and the fact where it was targeted. I mean, we're talking it was targeted at battleground states, and it was targeted pretty heavily within the Big Ten and the Pac-12 that aren't playing. Then there was a blame. Sure. It was a blame game. The guy in the office now, per the ad, is the reason. Here's COVID, and look what he did to you. He got football canceled.
Yeah, Donald Trump put America on the sidelines.
Uh-huh.
You know, let's get back in the game.
And you've got got a strong belief too, Kranak. I mean, we know folks that are pretty right wing, and you and I are pretty fair politically. You know, just laying that out. And I don't want to go, crossfire here, the old CNN show. But you got a pretty loud voice out there that believes, with this open records request. I mean, there's an element of belief out there where, all right, has there been communication with folks that are governors in certain states that have certain political leanings, have there been directives to make sure football doesn't happen? And you know, you can either roll your eyes at that or pound the table and say, yes, I believe that. I mean, that's where we're at. There's two aisles there, and that's out there. And this ad being released when it was, and it's so weird. You get a lawsuit from Nebraska. You got all the chancellors and presidents going, oh, dear God, we're getting sued now. And it didn't get dismissed immediately. You have the fact this ad came out, and then you have a guy that Wednesday of last week put an open letter out screaming we're not going to revisit anything this fall. Just a few days later, revisiting for November. Unless this was part of the plan all along and things weren't made clear with the options on the table for a later start date.
Look, nobody in this whole scenario looks good right now. Nobody. But I do want to clarify one thing about the Biden ad. Mm-hmm. I've seen some things on Twitter where people are saying, oh, see, this proves that this is political. And this is Biden. This is Biden's fault, essentially, is the accusation. I just want to make it clear real quick. So this decision was made like 18 days ago. Right. And it also happened in the MAC, which is also in that same kind of footprint.
Yep.
The ad itself is a really simple ad when you have resources. That is not an ad that you need to think about 12 months in advance. Political campaigns are opportunistic by nature, and they are ready to pounce on anything and to produce something and get it out in the world quickly. And so I just want to clarify that, like, if somebody's out there thinking like, oh, my God, they had this commercial planned for months and then the Big Ten pulled the plug and then now they can release it. That proves it. No. They very easily could have produced that commercial in like 2 or 3 days. I'm just really like, you need a couple drone pilots. You need a couple shots of empty stadiums.
You need some B-roll. You need some B-roll on Friday nights from a year ago, and the stadiums are lit up.
Yeah, you can find like stock B-roll that's on some like service that. I mean, I just want to make sure that if there are people out there that are just like, oh, it proves it. It doesn't, right? It doesn't prove it. Are there political factors here? Probably, but is this part of Joe Biden's grand plan to get elected? Probably not. That ad should not be in your head as something that like proves it. It's a bunch of shots of empty stadiums. There's no narration. There's like a couple graphics on screen,
some PA and some play-by-play, and
it's a really simple ad.
You can react to that thing however you want, and you can feel however you want about it.
They could bust that thing out quickly. That's not something that had to be planned for months. Just for whatever that's worth, I just want to kind of put it out there. Just from working in and around this industry for a long time, I can say that with 100% certainty.
Because you've produced these ads, not necessarily Biden and sidelines, but you've done work for a lot of companies.
Yeah, as long as you got a few shots.
Yeah,
as long as you know what your message is, you're good. You can bust that out in a day if you have your stuff together. You can bust that out in 2 days. So I'm just saying, don't look at that ad as somehow proof that this is all political and this is all Biden. Is it a factor? Probably. There's probably a factor there. I'm sure there's some chancellors and some presidents that are, God only knows what they're weighing and what their motivations are. But to like directly pin this on Biden or directly pin this on Trump, stop it. Stop it. Like, of all the things that, come on.
You just got a lot of cooks in the kitchen and no one's telling you what order's in. Lodge, you wanted to jump in, buddy?
I was just going to say, you guys see that Trump tweet last night from Off the Top Rope? What time was it at? 11:30 p.m. Disgraceful that the Big Ten is not playing football. Let them play.
So he weighed in. Yeah.
And he also said, I want them to play now. And then he fanned the flames. Imagine that. He fanned the. What did he say about? So this conspiracy that I was just talking about. God, I'm trying to find the tweet. Just where is it? Where is it? God, he tweeted so much last night.
And this morning, yeah.
It's so hard to find. But he said something to the effect of that, just like blaming. Okay, here it is. He says, "No, I want Big Ten and all other football back now. The Dems don't want football back for political reasons, but are trying to blame me and the Republicans. Another lie. But this is what we're up against. They should also open up all of their shutdown states." So he's putting it out there right now. He's fanning those flames. He's making people think that, like, oh, yeah, football canceled? The Democrats. The Democrats want to cancel the football.
Well, I'm with him for the first half of the tweet. Let him play now. What's the point of starting in November?
You can't tell me that it's too effing dangerous and we got to go in January.
And dude, that's when the flu is going to come back.
I get it. You can't you can't tell me that it's too dangerous now and it's going to be better later. It's going to be dangerous no matter what, depending on what medical advice and information you decide to listen to.
It's going to be worse later because it's going to be crappy weather where people are less outside, congregating more indoors, and the flu shows back up. It's going to be a worse situation.
You've got those wonderful dome cities in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is sweet. It's a good town. But Detroit, Minneapolis, and maybe the Carrier Dome. Where else am I thinking? Indianapolis, right? So you've got all four of those spots that have domes, and it'd be kind of a bubble option. Just get with the other Power 5 leagues. Are they still hell-bent on the end of September? Are they good at maybe moving it back, and let's all do this thing October 3rd? End of story.
I mean,
period.
That's the best solution for me. If we're not playing football before the first weekend in October, it's pointless for me because then it's not before the college football playoff, and it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
just do it in the spring anyway because it's not changing anything besides the NFL draft. Either give me football in October or give me a red and white game on Black Friday, and let's play in the spring.
Yeah.
Let's finish up the college football playoff and let's play the next weekend after the college football playoff because it's pointless to try to do a season while all that's going on.
Rick chimes in via email, chris@hailvarsity.com. God, I love me some Trump. So Rick chimes in. Elijah's telling us we have talked way too long. We need to break. Gary Barnett has some pretty interesting perspective here on the lawsuit. Also, this was just a shade before. Well, no, I think we did talk about November football. He also gets into the Thomas Fidone commitment, what it means to have a tight end of this caliber on an offense. He had a few of them. Daniel Graham is still scoring in 2001. But he has some backdrop on Frost's use of tight ends, especially at Oregon, that were really difficult to deal with. Get you excited if you're a Nebraska fan for what the offense can look like. Our rewind is next. It's former Buffs and Northwestern coach Gary Barnett. Brandon Vogel is about a half hour away. We'll run down the Iron Horse. Gary Sharp next hour. It's Weekend Edition. Mark Cranack, Chris Schmidt, and Elijah Herbal. It's Hail Varsity were presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranack.
Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Brandon Vogel coming up. Get his thoughts on the Thomas Fidone commitment. Busy day in the courtroom for the Husker 8 as the Nebraska players squaring off against the Big Ten. We welcome in the coach at Northwestern in Colorado and avid golfer. We say hi to Gary Barnett. Coach, how's your day going?
Chris, it's going well. What's going on there in Nebraska other than a lawsuit or two?
That's about it. You've had the Nebraska basketball program. Their players came forward today around 4 o'clock as well with statements out and against social injustice. So it's been busy today and quite a bit of news. I wanted to get your thoughts on if you've seen or what you've seen of Nebraska. And have you ever heard of players or a program suing, and this isn't Nebraska, but it's the players suing a conference? I mean, the last lawsuit I think I remember seeing things get pretty heated about was, didn't Oklahoma sue the NCAA back in like the mid-'80s?
Yeah, they did.
For TV.
But, this isn't, nothing's normal about this year right now, Chris. I mean, we're talking about stuff that we never dreamed we'd be talking about.
Yeah.
And who knows where it's all going, but it's crazy. I'm glad I'm not involved in coaching right now. It would be, there's just so many different ways that you go with this thing, and it's going to be interesting to see how much power athletes, pro athletes, college athletes really have. The overall mission of universities is not for athletics, and it's gonna be interesting to see how they withstand and how long they take these barrages before they just call it quits and just say, hey, we're not doing any of this sort of stuff. It's not worth it anymore. And who knows if it'll go that way, but it certainly could. And everybody is feeling their oats right now. Everybody that feels like they haven't been given a fair shake is getting their voice heard. And it's costly. It's so costly to these universities that are already on a small margin anyway. And so it's and even the NFL, NBA, all that. Major League Baseball, the margins are slimmer than people think, and it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they can afford to handle these lawsuits and these changes and these demands without making major changes.
Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, do you have any interest in this so-called vote? And it's been... I've had people say that are at the administrative level say, yeah, there was a vote, and that was part of the Big Ten's statement by Commissioner Warren. There's been other presidents within the Big Ten that said, it really wasn't a vote. So there's some haziness there. And then it was kind of reiterated, yes, there was a vote. Do you have a problem with players or a program asking to see that vote, or are you like, look, decision was made, move on?
No, I don't have a problem with these players and parents asking to hear the tapes and see the videos and find out about it, because I think it was done under a little bit of darkness and behind closed doors. And this is, as they perceive this is their future. As their parents see it, this is their sons and daughters' future that's being hampered or eliminated even and changed. So I get it all. Once you open the door for one group to demand these changes and demand the information, then you've got to do it for all groups, and that's where the Big Ten is sitting right now. Part of the issue is that every state has a different protocol as to how they handle things, and some are more strict than others. And it's trying to corral it all and come up with one answer for everybody is really difficult. And I totally empathize and with parents, and I'm shocked that there's not more transfers. But fortunately, football hasn't started yet, so there's still room for transfers. I mean, you take the schools that are quarter schools like Northwestern, and there's a couple others I think in the Big Ten, but I know there's a bunch in the Pac-12. Those kids have another month before they really could transfer any time during that period of time.
Well, you saw the stud offensive tackle for UCLA pack
right.
up, and he's headed to Baylor, right? So that's kind of the first, and we'll see if there are more dominoes. That's what I'm wondering with Nebraska and other Big Ten schools. Do you see some of the guys that can't play this fall leave? And I look, and I'm not sure where a guy like Patty Fisher sits, because he's been there for a long time. He's phenomenal. I mean, we're talking All-American lists and All Big Ten lists and potential league defensive player of the year, right? And his senior fall's been taken away. Is he a guy that leaves? Is there some guys that are redshirt juniors on Nebraska's offense or defensive side of the ball? I mean, Nebraska's, most of their secondary, 3/4 of it, they're all like seniors. I mean, there are guys that want to play, and how patient do they stay with this hope, and that may not have a lot of a lot of faith in this hope about even playing in winter.
Well, Chris, first of all these guys are talking to agents, and the information they're getting from agents usually is not accurate. It blows smoke up them, but sooner or later they can find out. They can get some accurate information through the process if they work at it hard enough. And those kids who are pretty well guaranteed that they're going to be NFL draft choices, more than likely they are not going to play next spring. There's no way they're going to play. And so it comes down to the kids that really are thinking about transferring are the ones who are on the bubble. And someone's got to be honest with them, or they have to work really hard to get the honesty out of everybody as to whether or not it would make sense for them to go transfer and get this season in right now, and so they have a chance to go. And when you sit back and you look at it from a distance, you go, really, is this really the right thing for us to do? Is to be creating this thing for these kids to go to the NFL? Mm-hmm. I mean, is that what football and colleges are about? And I'm not answering that. I'm just throwing it out as a question I think people have to ponder. And if you're a sports enthusiast, you look at it one way. If you're an academic, you look at it completely different. And that's what's going on right now.
Gary Barnett's with us, Few Minutes, Hail Varsity Radio. Do you anticipate massive amounts of tampering from other conferences that are playing with some guys if they want to fill out a roster, or is that something that is not really spoken about but maybe does exist?
Well, I would imagine there's a great deal of tampering going on right now. With the portal, what the portal did was allow tampering to happen and make it legal. So the tampering is legal to do right now, and that's exactly what's going on. You're missing a player or two on your team. You got plenty of time because nobody's even opening up until 1st of October. Mm-hmm. So, but now the risk you're running if you're a player is you go there and all of a sudden they cancel the season. And so now you're in the same boat you would have been in if you'd have stayed at Nebraska or Northwestern, wherever. Mm-hmm. So it's risky, and boy, you have to weigh your advice. You have to weigh what you think is going to happen. It's not an easy thing to do, but tampering is now legal because of the transfer portal. So of course it's going on.
How did you deal with guys that were messing with agents? And I'm not talking about. I remember Curtis Enos, right? The name popped into my head. Phenomenal back, Penn State, and I remember how good a senior year he had, right? Top 5 draft pick, took a suit, missed the bowl game. Didn't matter. I think Penn State rolled whoever they played anyway. But point is that has happened in the past to kids. How are you able to either A, hear about it and cut it off, or B, deal with the fallout and stay with a decent relationship with the kid who might have made a mistake?
Well, it's a fine line, and your obligation is to the kid. I always felt, but it was my obligation to make sure he knew exactly where the line was. That if he crossed, he was no longer an amateur, Gotcha. And if he didn't cross, then he was okay. And so I didn't have a big problem with guys talking to agents, just so they knew that, if you go to dinner with an agent, you pay your own bill. I mean, you can do that. You can talk. You just can't make it an agreement. Now, how much of that really happened, I don't know.
Sure.
But I do know that my players, or I hoped my players knew that I was on their side. I was hoping for them to have the best opportunity down the road for their life. But as you sit back and you think about it, Chris, from a distance, is that what college football is supposed to be about? And I think that's a big dilemma right now. And that's why I'm curious to see how much power these guys really have. And like I said in the opening, is this what universities want to be about? And who makes that decision? And who knows? I don't know where it goes and what it looks like, but I think we're heading for a collision course between those two issues.
Well, and you kind of laid it out a couple weeks ago about how you could have a minor league system developed. Guys come out of high school and go play there if they want to get paid. And
right.
Some kids just stay at school, and you're going to have your conferences and go from there. Coach, I want to get your thoughts on the tight end position. Nebraska landed a kid that's top 40 in the country, number one tight end of the country, and just big and fast and really kid out of Council Bluffs. And Nebraska's had more infiltration in their backyard or region with other schools, not only in the Big Ten, but other programs, Notre Dame, LSU. It's happened. There's a pretty good level of regional talent that's super high level. But I know you ran a double tight system, you and Watts did, and was really impressive. As you've looked at Frost's offenses, when you look at the Oregon teams you've seen, or even Central Florida, how big can a thoroughbred that's 6'6", 6'7", 260 that can run? That's great, but how can he be effective in the offense you're kind of familiar with Frost?
Well, I think Scott was there when they had a great tight end at Oregon who ended up getting in a lot of trouble and got suspended for a game and then got suspended for his last 2 years or dropped out of school. And I cannot for the life of me think of his name. I didn't have a chance to look this up to see what it was. That was as good a player as there was in the country. And when Oregon used him, because it was such an anomaly to their offense that people didn't, as they defended him, didn't think about it. But when you put a guy like that out there, they operated at a higher level than they'd ever operated before. And that's what one of these specialized tight ends can do for you. There's just not very many of them out there. It may be the hardest, single most difficult position to find, and yet they're making tons of money at the next level. But if you take a special tight end, we're talking Gronk, we're talking guys like that, Dan Graham in my case, you guys, what you can do with them offensively just makes it so much harder for everybody that's trying to defend you. So Scott, I think, knows what to do. He's seen it happen. He's had one of those guys. He couldn't stay there for one reason or another. But he's got experience doing that, and the guy was special. There's no question about it.
Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, last thought here, about a minute and a half. Who do you like for the FedEx this weekend in Illinois?
You know what? I don't know. How do you not like Dustin Johnson?
Oh, well, he pulled a Barnett last weekend, didn't he?
Like he just did. Good grief! I don't know how you not take a guy like that. So
you've had a round like that before, haven't you?
Not like that. Well, it felt like that, but it wasn't like that.
Yeah, just a little different optics on it. Well, good enough.
My gosh. Yeah.
That was awesome. Coach, you have a good rest of the weekend, and it was fun to chat, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
You bet, Chris. Good to be with you. Thank you.
Gary Barnett with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Yeah, we all have that round where we're walking off 18 and just smiling. Like, man, that wasn't Dustin. That wasn't DJ. Hey, come see us tomorrow. Shuey's sitting with me. It's Wilderness Ridge. We're on the road show Friday for Hail Varsity Radio. I am smiling. It's going to be out on the deck. It's going to be beautiful. So you're invited out, socially distant, outdoor. It's going to be all sorts of fun. And we'll talk some football, we'll talk some golf. But it is going to feel outstanding to get on the road again and do a show. I've done a couple of shows from my patio. That was nice. There was a German Shepherd and Labradoodle around that tried to disconnect me. They won't be with us this time. We'll be out on the deck at Wilderness Ridge, 4 to 6 tomorrow. Get yourself a cold one or get a bourbon. Scotty the bartender makes phenomenal drinks. Hell, go play some golf before the 4 o'clock show start. Get out there, swing the clubs, enjoy yourself. Be with us tomorrow on the road, Wilderness Ridge, 4 to 6, out on the deck. Mr. Vogel, Brandon Vogel's coming up on Hail Varsity.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Spending time, Hour 2, Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Big thanks to Gary Barnett as we wrapped up Hour number 1. Brandon Vogel and Gary Sharp can join us today. Find us on Twitter at Hail Varsity, at ESPN Lincoln, and some other handles to follow at Schmidt_radio, at Mark Skurs for Mark. At Mark Cranack, and at Herbal Essence. We welcome in author with John Cook and managing editor from HailVarsity.com and magazine, Brandon Vogel, with us at Brandon L. Vogel. Vogues, true or false, you had a Friday night under the lights at some point in your career, like Mr. Harburg did last night, throwing touchdowns and, getting to eat hot dogs and hang out in the second half.
No, I can't remember how many touchdowns did he count for last night.
5.
Definitely didn't. Yeah, definitely didn't get to 5. No, that was the quarterback's fault. I was a wide receiver. There's only so much you can work with now too. Yeah, I don't remember a 65-6 game. My freshman and sophomore year, we won a total of 1 game in 2 seasons. So it's more likely I was on the Wood River end of it, I guess, if I were to stop and think about it.
So 1 game in 2 years? Was that talent or coaching?
It was a rough stretch my freshman year. The varsity had not won a game the year prior either. So when we finally got that one, which was early, I think, in my sophomore year, I don't remember now, it was a long time ago, it set off quite the celebration, and then it happened to be the only one. But senior year, we ended up we became a playoff team, so at least we made some progress.
What accounted for that?
Me.
Oh, just you?
True whiteout diva. True whiteout diva.
Yeah,
me.
Some guys, you just got to be aware of where they're at on the field at all times, and it helps everybody else. Now, we had our class was pretty big, and we kind of had a pretty good group of players. So it was just a matter of, at small towns, it's so cyclical with like, hey, does this group of 6th graders happen to be better at playing basketball than the previous 4 groups? And if you do, you're good. And when you don't have those classes, you're not so good. And so it goes.
Yeah. Speaking of groups and talent, what's going on with the renaissance in and around the Metro right now with Division I talent? I was just trying to count it up in my head. I think in a typical year, it seems like you have 4 to 6 players from the state maybe that are kind of Division I caliber or Power 5 caliber. Nebraska almost got like double that, like probably a dozen or so. There's 4 Division I Power 5 quality tight ends alone right now in the Metro. What do you think accounts for that, this sort of resurgence that the state of Nebraska is seeing right now?
I honestly don't know. And it's probably a pretty, certainly a long magazine feature type of project to talk to some people and try and figure that out, because it's a pretty fascinating question. You look at, it used to be like Nebraska would kind of get the guys that it wanted, and have some guys go well player occasionally at Notre Dame or in Iowa would sneak in here and grab somebody. But when you see guys going to like Miami, Ohio, Northern Illinois, it just tells you about kind of the broader talent level outside of those top line guys that Nebraska's always had, like you said, maybe 4 or 5 a year. I think even without spring 7-on-7 football, I think year-round training has probably helped with that. That would be where I'd start. When you look at some of these businesses that have popped up where guys can go and train sports specific really all off season if they want. I think that's part of it. I still athletes, those guys that are getting, yes, you got me?
We got you now.
Yep, sorry. It'd be interesting to know some actual numbers on how many of those Nebraska athletes that are getting these power sport guys. I know that's a big deal too. That might be part of it as well.
Brandon Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Let's stick with some of that talent that Cranack alluded to. And you got Kobe Brett, you got A.J. Rollins committing yesterday, Thomas Fidone, of course, the big get, and thrusting Nebraska as into a top 20 class for 2021. Fidone's incredible to watch, and that was a necessary get for Nebraska. Spend a second here on Rollins, what you like about him, and also Brettson. If you want to, slap old Fidone on the back, go for it. But it's not fair to just gloss over. He's great, but you've got two other guys that are pretty intriguing as I look at them, and kind of project where they could end up and what they could do for Nebraska.
Yeah, so Rollins is another guy who, has kind of tested extremely well. He has that frame where Nebraska can really do almost whatever they want with him. In that way, he's similar to Fidone. Fidone's ranked what he's ranked for a reason. He's a little bit further along, I think, in my opinion, but Rollins is super intriguing to me. Just in terms of what he's able to do. And I think we talked a little bit about this on the Thursday show, but with these kind of versatile tight ends, I'm really interested in the impact it has on Nebraska's run game. I think it allows them to be super versatile. And when you've got these guys that are, pretty long and lean tight ends for now, we'll see how long they stay that way. That's part of the appeal here is you have the choice. Is just kind of what do you do? Does it allow you to go faster when you've got two of those guys on the field? Hey, it's no big deal if they're out wide, standing outside the numbers. They can do that. Chris Hickman is the guy who's in that category now, and Nebraska is here in a couple of years going to, as those guys come through the program and become contributors, it's kind of going to have a fleet of them, and that's pretty intriguing in terms of what you can do offensively.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And look, Brandon, it continues that trend, too, of just sheer size. I mean, these guys are all 6'5 plus. You throw in Harburg, he's 6'5 plus. And Nebraska's going to be, just by default, they're going to have to be. They're just going to be a really tall, big team. And be interesting to see how that correlates with the speed that they're all about, too. Now, Fidone, for those who haven't seen him, look, I don't want to be platitude guy here, but athletically, he's not as big now. But, he's Gronk type, right? You know what I mean? Just really, a lot bigger than everybody else and really damn fast and can catch the ball with one hand. That's the kind of frame that you're bringing in, isn't it? I mean, if you're trying to think of a comparison that we all know about, as a tight end, that's sort of the projection if he puts on the 30 to 40 pounds that it seems like every player puts on once they join the program.
Yeah, sorry, Mark, you cut out. What was the comparison?
Chris Schmidt. No, I'm kidding. No, a Gronk
pile
type.
Of crap in the corner.
A Gronk type, honestly. Just
yeah. I mean, I think that's the hope, and you're right. He'll have to put on some weight to get there, which has not been a problem at all so far for guys coming into Nebraska into that strength and conditioning program who are willing to put in the work. And from everything we've heard from his coaches and people around him, that's not an issue here either. And everybody's out there looking for that type of player. They become hugely valuable. Just as, you've seen the George Kittle contract, all of those things at the NFL level. These tight ends are becoming some highly coveted prospects. And if you can get one of those early and have them at the college level, it's almost becoming one of the biggest recruiting wins you can have.
Vogues is with us. HailVarsity.com and magazine is where you read Brandon L. Vogel, also Dream Like a Champion. Vogues, let's get your take on how you see this November situation, as in Thanksgiving, as moving the season up with the Big Ten. What do you believe? And with reports, this is something that came out with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, okay, and I'm sure they have close contacts with certain people on the competition committee with the Big Ten. All that being said, do you like an earlier start date, or is it just more madness?
Yeah, certain former offensive linemen at Nebraska, maybe.
Linebacker, too.
Which is fine. Yeah, sorry, linebacker. November's pretty intriguing to me, when you start to break out, like, what that schedule would look like. So you'd get a little bit of, hey, we're playing while some others are still playing. You'd have a chance, I assume, the recruiting calendar's like wadded up in the wastebasket at this point. But if that returns to some sort of normal timeline, you'd be able to potentially get some official visits in before the traditional December dead period. That's assuming that they're still having an early signing period. We haven't heard an official ruling on that yet. You'd go up against the NFL, and we know from Bill Moose's comments this week that NFL GMs have been in those conversations with athletic directors. So there must have been something there that said, hey, maybe even before January might be even better for you. Who knows? That's me guessing, because there hasn't been, of course, a whole lot of transparency here. You just get occasional puzzle pieces that you try to fashion together. But I think November's interesting. Sooner's better than later. I don't think it's going to go much earlier than that. And I guess there's no guarantee that things are going to be different in November than they would be right now. You just kind of give yourself some more time, which I think was ultimately the Big Ten's goal.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Look, depending on how you view the pandemic and COVID, you could just say the answer to the question of, hey, why did you cancel the season, Big Ten? You could just say, well, because of a global pandemic, right? And so for some people, the argument stops right there. But for a lot of others, it doesn't. So against the context now of high school football being played across the country, every major league sport playing, the prospects of the SEC, ACC, Big 12 as of today seems like they're going to play. All that said, have you heard a satisfactory reason 18 days after the announcement from the Big Ten about why they are not playing?
No, because we really haven't gotten much in the way of answers on that at all. So you're kind of left to surmise that out of an abundance of caution, I don't think it's too loaded to say that, given what you just mentioned, all of the other things that are happening or about to happen. The Big Ten was certainly so far one of the more cautious amongst those. They're not the only conference, but they're kind of the big domino to fall, of course. Out of an abundance of caution, they decided to make the decision. It's still the kind of irreconcilable part of this is why it happened when it did. Like, why not wait till now? Who knows? Maybe we'll. I don't think answers to that are coming anytime soon. But maybe at some point we'll get those. But no, when you see these, I mean, you look at high schools and they're going almost all over the country. I know some states have canceled entirely, but a lot of them are going, including Nebraska. I went to a game in Tennessee last week. They're going. And if they can do that with kind of the limited resources that high schools are working with, it does kind of underscore the Big Ten's decision in early August to just say, no, we've seen enough. And it's hard. But no, to answer your question directly, I guess, and not stammer on here, I haven't seen a satisfactory answer for that.
Vogues, when we talk about the Big Ten, why? Why do you think they have potentially backpedaled and opened up November as an option? What's your read? 2, is the bridge blown up, or can you navigate across that bridge and reach out to the Power 5 leagues that are playing and maybe get a uniform start date? How would that conversation go from the Big Ten to the 3 leagues that are going right now in late September? But I know delaying's no good and no fun, but you could push it back a week and have a uniform start date in October, like October 3rd.
You could. We're so close now that it almost seems like that horse is out of the barn. And because, it didn't help that, when the Big Ten made its conference only announcement, you heard some rumblings from other conferences of like, hey, we had no idea they were going to do this. So you may have burned a little bit of a bridge there. I don't really view a potential Thanksgiving start date, however, as a backtrack. That's just me personally, So the initial decision comes out made by the Council of Presidents and Chancellors and says spring. Okay, well, it wasn't 2 weeks before we're like, okay, well, maybe it's actually more January. And I just think it's as they've gotten into these meetings and, the fact that they didn't start talking about this until they've already made the decision is a whole separate problem. But I just think as they've gotten into this and as the ADs, I think, have been more involved, like ending up at November kind of feels like, okay, once we got into it and started looking at it, the initial spring timeline, which we just kind of put out there because it's what we knew at the point, didn't become that feasible. What did become feasible is November. So in terms of partnering with the other conferences, I think there's a perception that the Big Ten kind of left them out on their own to go off and do its own thing. So I don't know how much cooperation you're going to get there. Alabama Birmingham is which has 900 COVID cases so far. Now that's a big school and they have a medical school there, so I don't know the details of all this testing, but Alabama Birmingham is scheduled to play on Thursday. So it's really go time for those schools. They're going to forge ahead. And I just don't see the Big Ten, to me, who knows at this time, where surprises occur every day. Maybe it's best to say nothing, but I would be surprised if they ended up going much earlier than the Thanksgiving date that's out there. That really, to me, seems like about as early as they'd be willing to go for various reasons.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Do you think that, it's obvious that Nebraska is kind of in the lead as it relates to, no, let's try to do this thing. They've been the most vocal out of all the schools. Do you think there is long-lasting damage in Nebraska's relationship with the Big Ten, or because of all the academic prestige that comes with being a member of the Big Ten? Do you view it as a short-term ripple and Nebraska's not going anywhere?
Yeah, I kind of view it as a short-term ripple, I think. We know from the fan point of view, grudges remain for a long time, and I think Nebraska will deal with some of that. But there's also plenty of, saw a lot of, when the lawsuit came out earlier in the week, saw a lot of tweets from Ohio State fans that were like, go Huskers. So you have a little bit of that too, but conference wide, I think you always have some of that, some kind of SEC Big Ten division. There'll be a little bit of negative backlash if the Big Ten is is basically the most powerful conference that isn't playing while others aren't, saying, oh yeah, look at the Big Ten. We're already seeing that to some degree, but for the most part, things will smooth out. I think eventually you'll always have a little bit of people who just define the Big Ten by what's happened so far, but hopefully even by next fall, but 2-3 years down the road, when football is back and everything feels hopefully normal again, it'll fade away. Almost everything's temporary.
Brandon, what about Kevin Warren? How hot is his seat right now? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it would be the Council of Presidents and Chancellors that would be the one that would fire him, correct?
Yes, as far as I understand. I personally don't think it's that hot unless some information comes out that some of the kind of wilder thoughts about what has happened with this come out. But ultimately, he's a new commissioner who acts basically at the behest of that council. I know everyone has already assumed they know what Kevin Warren personally feels about this, but I don't. I have no idea what he personally feels about this. We know his son's playing in the SEC. That might be the closest indication of how he personally, in a personal decision for his family, feels about it. But if he doesn't have the support of council and presidents, if, say, that vote is 12-2 or whatever, just throwing that out there, then what do you do? Other than kind of step up and have to take the heat for it. And boy, he's taken a lot, and he didn't help himself with kind of his transparency and his answers to the few questions he's taken so far. But I personally am not ready to just throw him under the bus for this. Could things have been better? Yeah, it's a new job for him, and I kind of look at it as like there's two options here. Either he is historically bad at this, and if he is, he won't have that job for very long, or we don't have all of the information. He's doing this because he feels it's the best course of action. Either way, he's going to be judged on that eventually. I just don't think that's coming that quickly.
Two things. He better hope and pray that things don't move forward with football so he looks right. Or he better figure out a way. He's got so many camps to please, Vogues, doesn't he? I mean, he's got to be able to the Council on Presidents and Chancellors. Yeah, he works for them. He's also the guy who needs to communicate the wants and needs and hopes of the athletic directors and the coaches and the players, by the way. I mean, at least this competition committee has the medical folks and the chancellors and presidents and coaches. It's got everybody at the table. And it's just, too late in the process because there wasn't unified conversations earlier with this thing. He was kind of a point guy with several different meetings, and he had to take what X meeting said to the next meeting, and it's easy to armchair. I can't imagine stepping into something like this during a pandemic, for God's sake. And it probably at his heart, to your point, my kid's playing. He probably wants to play ball. But if it's just Ohio State, Nebraska, and Iowa saying, "Let's play ball," his hands are tied. But the presidents and chancellors, they sure as hell haven't helped him out by coming forward. They're the ones that made the decision.
Right. They haven't. And even, the strange thing about it is even what chancellors and presidents have come out and said doesn't match either.
Exactly.
Which is
CYA
is strange. Yeah, which is strange. I mean, Ronnie Green, a group of Nebraska players said, "Hey, here's 3 instances of presidents saying that there was not a vote or they were unsure if there was a vote." Left out that the chancellor of this university said that there absolutely, quote unquote, absolutely was. So, I mean, that doesn't change what's in that lawsuit. It just says, hey, look at this uncertainty here. But that's been strange. It certainly seems like, and I don't mean this as a slight against Kevin Warren. I more look at it as kind of evidence of just how early on he is in this. Like, that sort of division and every person for themselves doesn't happen under Jim Delaney. And Jim Delaney was a singularly good conference commissioner. Like, he will go down in history for everything he did for the Big Ten. And he wasn't perfect with everything either, but you just look at all the money those schools make, the expansion, all of that. He pulled a lot of levers, and a lot of them were the right ones. It's been a little bit strange, and I think it's, I do chalk a good deal up to him just being new and it being hard, and a lot of those council of presidents and chancellors being new themselves. It's it's like you graduated a big class of seniors, and you also got to throw in a new coach, and you're trying to kind of build a unified team again. And unfortunately, they needed that team to be ready to go by the season opener, and it wasn't. We'll see if they get ready to go by Thanksgiving, I guess, now, and see if that helps.
Brandon Vogel's with us. Vogues, you have a great weekend. It was a fun chat this morning. Thanks for your time, as always.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Brandon Vogel with us, at Brandon L. Vogel. Get his book with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion. Read him on HailVarsity.com and magazine. What's up?
Did you see what the Husker account tweeted yesterday?
The countdown?
Yesterday was 1 year exactly until Dublin.
I know.
That's still a thing.
It's been 2 years since we were taking car bomb shots, and you were leading the breadcrumbs out there for an Ireland game. You started this. You know this.
Dude, we started this back in 2017.
Not we, you. I mean, you get all the credit, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you got your Irish buddies over there, because you've been over there for work a few times. I mean, I can't wait to go over there and do our show.
It's going to be ridiculous.
We better start rowing now.
We got to get Ted on. Ted's my guy over in Dublin.
That'd be great.
We got to get him on. And he's born and bred, so he knows the spots. He could start scouting for us.
He could get us, a pub with a power source and right by the stadium, and we could just.
That's what I'm saying.
Just do a 24-hour show.
24 hours.
Well, I don't know about all that.
We'd have line changes. That would be good. That would be good. Let's step away, and we'll bring in the Iron Horse. Gary Sharp's on the way with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kranak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out. Excellent strategy, sir.
Weekend edition rolls forward. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kranak, Elijah Herbal. We welcome in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. Sharpie, how big a smile did you have on your face when you got into the booth and got ready for some high school football this week, man? Congrats on another year of high school ball for you, and it had to be just awesome to be under the lights.
Yeah, it was. The old friend was back. It was nice to see live sports, nice to see football. And it kind of hits you when you finish the broadcast. And you're like, wow, this is the only show in town. This is high school football, and then a collection of colleges playing in Nebraska. But it's great to see everybody's doing the right thing. I'm glad the NSAA allowed the opportunity for fall sports in Nebraska to move forward, and the excitement on players' faces. It just felt a little bit normal. But before we go any further, can we discuss that Mark just said that he has a friend over in Dublin and his name's Ted? You would think that if you had a friend in Dublin, it would be like Limas or something like that, not somebody named Ted.
Well, his real name's Gary, but he goes by Ted. There's a whole thing over there. There was a show called Father Ted, and then I don't know. He's an interesting cat.
I know a Father Ted.
Might have been him.
Who needs football?
We all need football, man. So
are you going, Gary?
Gary's coming with us. We are kidnapping Sharpie, and he's going across the pond with us in 2021. Are you in?
You know what? I would be in. That's an experience. I wish I kind of would have gone to Tokyo back in, 92?
Oh, I know.
I heard stories about that.
Well, I mean, that would have been great to be on the plane when you have Kansas State and Nebraska sharing the same plane going over there. And, you bump into the Road Warriors, and look what happens in Tokyo.
I'm just thinking of kicking it with Devaney in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Was that the only one, too? I cannot think, maybe I haven't been paying enough attention.
It was the Coca-Cola Bowl.
Schools go play in Japan?
No, not before and not since.
Yeah, that was the rare, there was a stretch where, I remember Oklahoma State went over there and played.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah, I think Nebraska K-State was one of the last games that was played over there because they were trying to expand college football in Japan. Because football was starting, American football, they were trying to get it off the ground in Japan. But after that, it was just way too expensive, and they lost some major sponsors. So I think Nebraska, Kansas State were one of the final ones to go over there and play. But you remember when Nebraska would always take those kind of trips, but they were more like to Hawaii at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii. That was pretty cool. They went to Japan. And you guys mentioned it, and you're right. This date, there will be a lot of Nebraska fans. Well, their fingers crossed. But I know I'm following some Notre Dame.
Sharpie, I'm going to interrupt you. Sharpie, we've lost you completely.
He's there, but he's far away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the earbuds.
Sharpie, we got you, bud.
Is it the Beats by Dre?
We're gonna reconnect. We're gonna reconnect with Sharpie.
Did he try to save money by getting the knockoff AirPods?
You'll have to ask
Amazon.
You'll have to ask him.
$20.
I don't know.
They look just like it, but do they operate the same? No, they don't.
That was the best gag gift ever for Christmas.
What?
We wrapped Junior up like some $4 fake AirPods. Put him in his stocking. He was all excited that Junior got AirPods, and then they were the super cheap AirPods. He was pissed then. We got to redial him. He dropped. And then, we it's kind of like the old Red Ryder BB gun. Did you get everything you wanted? Well, no.
You know what you could do with the AirPods? You could just take like the corded ones, just cut off the cords, right? And then it looks like an AirPod.
Yeah.
And then you just wrap those.
Well, anywho, the smile on his face and then the "I'm going to kill you" look in his eyes was pretty good. That wasn't funny.
This year, COVID's canceled, or Christmas is canceled because of COVID.
Okay.
So
there we go. Sharpie, we got you back, buddy.
Yeah, that was a great story I just told. I hope all your listeners enjoyed it.
Well, reset it if you want.
Hopefully you said it in front of other people.
Yeah,
are you
had an
somewhere?
audience.
Yes.
You at the interrail somewhere?
No, I'm out in the great outdoors, which this would be. Imagine if you were playing football today. The weather's going to be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
No. Hey, who'd you have, by the way, Friday?
We had Thursday night. We had Elkhorn South and Millard West. Eric Crouch's son kicked the game-winning field goal with 9 seconds to go to give Elkhorn South a 30-28 victory.
Yeah, I saw that. Now, does he play other positions too, or is he just kicker?
This year, I believe that he's just the kicker.
Okay, and so you got to see a couple pretty good offensive linemen for Elkhorn South. Obviously, one of them, Teddy Pro. Does he go by Prohaska or Prochaska?
Prohaska.
Prohaska. That's what I thought. Yep. So. You got Prohaska, and then you also have the younger Zadiska, who's getting some attention. A lot of bohunk offensive linemen on that team. What did you make? What did you make of seeing him in person against obviously a quality opponent?
Well, let me first mention it was quite the interesting night on Thursday here in the Metro because the Omaha West Side Creighton Grip game, Chris Brown's son Colby is a backup quarterback for Westside. So he got into that game that Westside won. And then the game that I had, you not only had Eric Crouch's son, you had Matt Hoskinson's son, you have John Kadiska's son that are all playing in that game. I mean, it makes us feel all old that guys that were on the 90s team now have kids that are, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, or seniors in high school. Teddy is bigger than he was last year. He is a legit 6'4", 290, but he even looks skinny at that frame. His vertical didn't change. He added 20 pounds of muscle in the offseason. Told me that he's doubling up in his English classes so he can graduate early. One thing and I've seen Teddy play in person probably 4 or 5 times over the last 2 years. I expect more out of him. He is usually better on the defensive side of the football. I expect him to dominate on the offensive line. I think he will benefit from a couple of things at Nebraska. First and foremost is more time with Zach Duvall in the fifth distance program. But I really think his game will take off when he gets under the tutelage of Greg Austin. There's some technique things that he still needs to work on. I'd like to see him dominate a little bit more. When you look at his frame and what you can do with him, and I'd like to see him get a little bit more of an edge, I think he'll be okay when he gets to Nebraska. But I think Nebraska's given him an impression that they would like him on the field sooner than later, and that's why he's going to enroll early and be on campus in January.
Sharpie, takeaway this week with the work Nebraska did on the recruiting trail, Brett's out of West Side. Rollins from Prep yesterday. I really like Rollins' film, just how slippery he is, and I know he's powerful. He's an edge mauler, but he is good. He's just fluid. And then, of course, I know you've been tracking, and you had a really good insight on Fidone, the gem of the class. Just a quick comment on Nebraska's haul this week.
Well, let's start with Kobe Bretz, who not a lot of people know about because, Kobe had to take care of some things off the field to get his mind right. And if he wanted to play football or not, do all the things you have to play football at West Side. And he's done that, and kudos to him. He's a freak of an athlete. He can play safety, he can play outside linebacker at the next level. He's got great athleticism, moving laterally, backpedaling when he's playing as a defensive back. I think he's got a very good instinct. I think he's also got a body that can grow. I think that's one of those pickups for Nebraska where they go, okay, we can project him. This is where we see his path going. And that's a credit to Kobe in a year, how much progress he has made in that program. I like that pickup a lot. I also think that offer came a little bit quicker because Minnesota was very interested because him and Avante Dickerson are really good friends. And so Nebraska doesn't want to lose two guys from the number one team in the state to Minnesota. So they made the offer, and, of course, he said yes. Everybody knows what we talked about with Fidone. He's the real deal. I'm not as high as you are, Schmitty, on A.J. Rollins. I don't know. I'm looking at James Carney at Norris. Mm-hmm. I think James Carney at Norris is the better tight end. I just don't know where A.J. Rollins is going to play. I know he's going to come in as a tight end, but there's a lot of things to his game, and I think he's got to get the motor going.
Gotcha.
He definitely has the size for to be a tight end in the Big Ten, but I don't know. I've always been, man, is that an offer that Nebraska made way too early? But you never know. I mean, he gets into a program. It's not like they're going to ask him to come in and play right away. But if you look at where they're going with the tight end recruiting, and you start with Fidone, and you look at the guys that are going to be in that room for another year and another year after that, I mean, it's very, very promising. But I think A.J., kudos to him saying yes to Nebraska. It's important for Nebraska to get guys out of the Omaha area, and that's a good program with a former Husker that's running in Tim Young. I just think, A.J. Rollins has got some work to do.
Gary Sharp is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. I asked Brandon about this too, and you're a lot closer to the high school football scene in the Metro. But the level of talent, there is a decided. It's a huge increase in the number of Division I prospects that Nebraska, specifically the Metro, is churning out right now. Maybe double what you would even have like 3-4 years ago. Is that a component? Is the reason why that's happening because of Nebraska's sort of like overall exposure and the camp circuit being in the Big Ten? There's just more attention on the Metro, or is it off-season training? Is it a combination of that? Why are there basically double the number of D1 prospects in the Metro right now?
Everything you said, Mark. The off-season training is a big thing. You look at the different facilities that are in the Omaha area where kids can train year-round. Not only strength and conditioning, but they can do football work. I think programs are better, and it's not just head coaches. I think there's the position coaches in this area are better. So players are, they're more college ready in high school programs these days, and they're playing a lot more football. They not only have the fall around here, but in the summertime there's 7-on-7. There's a camp where you can pad it up and you can go full speed in June in the Omaha area. So I think there's a lot more opportunities, and I think guys getting out and getting exposure, more people are going, okay, who's the next Chris Hickman, Nick Hendricks, Noah Fant, Xavier Watts from Omaha and the surrounding area? We got to take an extra look. And all of a sudden, you got guys that are blowing up with their recruiting. They're getting offers from all over the country, and you've got two guys who have to sit out this year because they're at OPS schools that are going to be in next year's class, some of the highest-ranked players in the country. It's really amazing, and I've seen it over the last 3 or 4 years, and I could feel it coming because you could see the talent coming up. And I think the pipeline is continuing, and it's encouraging. And it's, for some things, it's going to make Nebraska's job easier. For some players, it's going to make their job more difficult because there are more teams that are coming into Nebraska to recruit these kids.
Gary, this is a little out there, so you can stop me if I'm getting too crazy. But we're now 25 years removed from the golden era of Nebraska football, and the people that grew up watching the Huskers in that era are now, sitting their kids through high school. We're parents trying to raise the next great Husker? Is that why we're seeing this resurgence of talent in Nebraska?
All right, you're way out there. Stop. Turn off your mic. No, just kidding. It's a fair question. I think, listen to Thomas Fidone, what he said about his choice of Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
They grew up as Nebraska fans. When they won, he's excited. When they lost, he cried. He wasn't around in the 90s. So you got to find those people that still have the passion for the program. But first and foremost, you have to sell yourself. And we've seen that not just with local kids. It's out-of-state kids in 2019 class, 2020 class, the 16 that are in the 21 class. They're selling Nebraska. They're selling the process. They're selling hope. And they're still selling the guy that is the head coach, that he's got the program headed in the right direction. So one thing that I think we've all talked about, you would have loved to have, and you may still have some semblance of the 20 season, is a lot of the roadblocks, excuses, whatever, that were in your way in the first 2 years, you've done a good job of eliminating them, and you want to see if they're going to come to fruition. But I think on the recruiting trail, they're still selling the process. They're still selling hope. They're still selling Scott Frost. And then hopefully, sooner than later, they'll be able to sell results and say, hey, we got this guy, top 50 national player, number one tight end. He came and chose us after we've won 9 games in 2 years, and we turned him into an NFL guy. And then that's where it starts the hamster wheel starts turning, and you start benefiting from that.
Sharpie, before we say goodbye, and it was awesome chat, do you have a takeaway? What was your initial reaction with the lawsuit that moved forward on Thursday?
Well, just you ask the question, what is the Big Ten hiding? What don't they want you to know? Is it what they were looking at from a medical standpoint, a liability standpoint? The transparency thing really boggles our mind. And now I just feel like they're throwing out trial balloons on, hey, if we're going to start around Thanksgiving, what do you feel about this? And they also may be throwing stuff out because they feel pressure. I don't think the lawsuit's going to move forward. I don't think the Big Ten is going to budge. It's just, why are we in this situation, guys? This is a proud league. This brand has taken a major, major hit over the last 3 weeks. And I don't know how they recover it. I don't know how you sell the return to the field, whether it be in November or January, and have everybody on board. I mean, when you hear that coaches and athletic directors are talking to medical people, and some coaches say this meeting didn't happen yesterday, it has turned into a circus. This is the Big Ten. This is where we're at. This is really depressing. But Nebraska's going to push forward because I think Nebraska never got a sense of urgency that the season was in peril. If they would have reacted differently. And I think that's why you see the reaction from parents, from players, that they were caught completely off guard, and they just want to know why. And, you would hope that there would be more programs in the conference that would be more vocal with them. But one thing we have seen, Ohio State and Nebraska have formed a little bit of a bond here during all of this. I'll be curious to see what the benefits of that are moving forward because Ohio State is the biggest brand in this league, and they have the most leverage of anybody. And now they have a partner with Nebraska.
Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse. Sharp, you have a good weekend, and we'll talk some more football next Saturday. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
That'll do it for the weekend edition. Kranek, what do you got rolling?
I wasn't ready for that question. I don't know. I'm going to do something outside because it's not going to be terrible. How about you?
Same. I'll do that. All right. We'll talk to you on Monday with Hail Varsity. Thanks.